Lifestyle Pirates with Big J and Adriano.
Okay, good morning and welcome to Lifestyle Pirates. You're here with me, Big J and Adriano. This morning we are welcomed by a very, very good friend of mine. There is nearly 20 years worth of history behind the two of us. Thomas Averill, who's Managing Director of the Rochford Group here in Sydney. Good morning.
Morning, John. Morning, Adriano. How are you?
A little bit. No, it's after lunch. We're drinking champagne.
A little bit of an anecdote. I've known John for so long that when I first met him, he wasn't called Big J.
Oh, there you go. It was Little J.
I think there is a bit of a storyline, actually. People that refer to me as like Sermo, Big J, other names as well that I'll probably say behind my back. But there is that kind of evolution, which is quite interesting. But yes, you are right. We've got some serious stories to tell today.
Did you give him the name?
No, but he gave me my nickname.
Okay.
Incidentally.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Can we mention what that name is?
Yeah, it's TAV, which is very, very dull because we started out working together in foreign exchange. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't use the initials TA, which is my name, because that stood for trading agreement. So I had to use TAV.
Yeah.
But, John would just shout at me across the dealing room. And I remember I was particularly excited this time because I was going on this date with this actually Australian nurse. And this is well before I moved here. And I was walking out of the dealing room and John, across 30 people, shouted out to me, "Tav, don't be a fool, wrap your tool." And this is about 4:00 in the afternoon on a Friday before I got on the train to take this guy out on this date. So, yeah.
Tom hadn't seen Van Wilder, so he was like, "What are you talking about?"
I haven't seen it either.
Oh, you're joking?
No.
Oh, dude, it's a great movie.
It sounds like it.
Great movie.
Content sounds great.
Yeah, so to give a bit of context, Tom and I have known each other since about 2003. Both started working with each other in the UK in foreign exchange. I think I was with the business 2 weeks and then got told to look after the new guy, which Tom turned up and just quickly said to me, "Well, I got a degree in economics and finance. What have you got?" And I went, "Marketing and management." And he said, "Lovely." So I said, "Well, look, you teach me everything you know, and I'll go and get a bacon sandwich." And it was my round. And then, you moved over here. So that was 2003. You moved over here 2007?
Yeah, January 2007.
Yeah. And then, so we're going to talk today about your journey within the Rochford Group, but I want to kind of focus on the entrepreneurial side. I'm not too bothered about the foreign exchange piece, but you can certainly plug Rochford Group if you want to. But I want to kind of, considering we've known each other and we're of similar age and similar ilk, I want to focus on your drive and why you wanted to start a business, the journey you went through to take on the business, do the management buyout and stuff. So we're definitely going to cover off that. But let's just start with the definition of an entrepreneur. And I had to write this down. Okay. But it's an individual who creates a new business bearing most of the risks and enjoying most of the rewards. Thank you for the champagne this morning, by the way. The entrepreneur is commonly seen as an innovator, a source of new ideas, goods, services, and business or procedures.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I'm not quite sure I tick all those boxes, to be honest.
That's fine.
I'm definitely a risk taker. And I think that was what led me to start businesses. And there's quite a lot of people out there that have very, very successful businesses that haven't really actually innovated that much. There's a business in Germany, I think it's called Rocket IT, Rocket Internet, that actually own the Iconic in Australia. And all they do, these two German guys, is rip off other people's ideas but launch it in other markets before they get time to.
Yeah. Right.
So they launched Iconic before ASOS could launch in Australia. Yeah, so Iconic is an ASOS rip-off, and they've got all these other rip-offs that they go in. So they've got huge businesses in South Africa, because when you've just got this new great IT idea, you're not going to go immediately to South Africa. You might go, right, I'll start in the UK, then I go to the US, and I go to Australia. So they go on the hunt for all these fantastic ideas and then go and take it to a market that's too far away down the track for those guys to get there. So
a bit like a Didi, an Ola, and an Uber.
Yeah, no, exactly. So if you always have to have a brand new idea to be an entrepreneur, then I would say I'm still aspiring to be an entrepreneur, and I'll talk about what my ideas for that are a bit. But you asked what motivated me to sort of start my own business and try and be successful and try and be an entrepreneur. And recently, actually, I've done a bit of soul searching about that. What was my true motivation? And I think that lots of people will try and say that they had all these fantastic intentions that was behind their desire to be successful, and they just wanted to better themselves and all that sort of stuff. But if I'm honest, my biggest desire, motivating force to be successful, was so I could say "fuck you" to a lot of doubters and a lot of some bad things in my past. To be honest,
so spite essentially.
It's a good motivator.
Have you got the definition of spite there? I'm not sure it fully qualifies for that either, to be honest. But it was a real desire to prove some people wrong and also not be vulnerable and not be weak. So it wasn't a case of actually I really want to achieve this for the, and it was very, very selfish. I was bullied quite a lot at school, and that only stopped when I decided to start being assertive. So it only stopped because I decided to stop it, not because for any other reason. And that was, so then I just said, right, well, how do I make myself infallible, that no one's ever going to find weakness and that again. So that was my desire to be successful. Was I always want, and I still have this insecurity now that I want to be the most successful person or the biggest personality in the room.
Right.
So that, so no one could pick on me, to be honest. And that, that is, then that creates other kind of challenges in your personal life and the way you behave. But that was a big driving force for me. And it still, ironically enough, still does drive me. So, you park up to someone who's got a better car than you, or a bigger house than you, and it's not necessarily materialistic. I don't want anybody to have anything over me.
You were striving for more.
Yeah, but not to have more, but just to have more than the bloke next to it. It's really, and I'm not proud of it, but I'm just wanted. Lots of people aren't very honest about what it is that drives them, and for me that was. I want to be I don't want to be weak. I don't want to be vulnerable. So how do I achieve that?
So let's go back, because thank you for sharing that as well. Let's kind of unpack that backwards. So what was the process of Rochford forming? How did that come about? Where did that idea come from?
Well, this is probably partly where I don't necessarily qualify as an entrepreneur, because Rochford originally was a management buyout of a business I didn't start. So I might sort of take that a step back. So because I had this driving force from when I was very young, from a very young age, from sort of 13 and 14, I always wanted to have my own business, because that's what I thought would protect me the most. So when I started my career with you back in 2003, I must have been quite a difficult person to manage, because I always wanted to get the next promotion, the next. So what was fantastic, what that gave me, which I can see lots of people, I've met lots of people along the way that struggle with this, is that they don't have direction. And actually I've always had direction, so that's been great. So when I started with you in FX, I knew what my first job was, I knew what my second job was, I knew what my third job was. And then by the time I was in my third job, I went to my boss and said, right, we need to start this business in Australia. So I pitched for that, and I think I got it. One, because I was talented, but two, because I was cheap. So then I came to Australia in 2007, and then I was in charge of launching this division. I had some fantastic people around me to help me do that. There was my original boss, Spencer Wilcox, who gave me a huge amount of support and latitude. Des Mumford, who was my sort of first hire at HRFX, was again, the sage that kept me grounded and provided all the sort of broader skill set and experience to help us start the business. And then we had a phenomenal sales guy, a guy called Elliot Cousins, who was just this, most phenomenal sales guy I've ever worked with. So we had the sort of four of us that started this business on behalf of our old employer, and then we grew it from 2007 to 2010 incredibly rapidly.
And just to pause there, what was the product? What was the service?
So we were advising companies on how foreign exchange risk would impact their profitability or their cash flows. And it was one of the reasons why it grew so well. It was the GFC, so the market was going all over the place. So companies were really, really concerned about what that might do to their business.
So break that down. Let's go another. I'm a big fan of layman terms. So
Okay.
what does that mean for someone that doesn't know what FX is? Why would that impact? Why would they need you?
So one of our clients through that period was Oraton. They didn't stop using us and then went bust, so that was their own fault. So, but anyway, so what we were doing for Oraton, for example, through the GFC was they imported all their products in US dollars and then sold it domestically in Aussie dollars. So when the Australian dollar exchange rate collapsed, they needed our help to help them protect them, their business from that and their margins from that, which we did very, very successfully. And to be honest, I don't know how many people remember Sydney back in 2008, 2009, but at the time, this was before the gin explosion, and getting good gin and tonic was very, very hard in Sydney back in 2008, 2000. I remember coming for London and thinking, fucking hell, gun tonic, working at Fever Tree, wasn't it? Couldn't get a good gin and tonic
First world problems.
From anywhere. So there was numerous nights where Des and I were in Zebra Lounge at like 2 o'clock in the morning, sinking gin and tonics, drowning our sorrows when the market was absolutely in free fall. So,
and this was pre-management buyout or post?
So this was pre-management buyout, but it was in an entrepreneurial environment because we were starting a business.
But you were still employed, so you're still employed at this point. Yeah, market's tough.
Yeah, so we weren't on personal risk. So and this is why I say, if I'm honest, maybe I don't tick all of the boxes of being 100% an entrepreneur. But so but I'd certainly tick some of them around. Anyway, so we built this business from 2007 to 2010, and there was lots of kind of lucky circumstance in terms of, say, you mentioned earlier before we went on air around the impact of luck. So I think the GFC was very, very fortunate timing for us when we were building that business for somebody else. But of course, we built it was incredibly successful, and I attributed a lot of that success to me, and I was wrong. It wasn't all down to me, but I attributed way too much of it to myself. So when we did the management buyout in September 2010 and took it out of the sort of mother hen massive organisation infrastructure that we'd had, and to be honest, and I'm sure Elliot won't mind me saying this, him and he was the head of sales, I was the head of delivery. We had a bit of an ego clash around, who was the biggest hen in the whatever hen house. So Elliot didn't end up coming with us. So we took about 3 or 4 people and we did a management buyout and we started Rochford. And then suddenly I've lost the big support of this big organisation. I've lost this head of sales that was actually phenomenal, but I actually thought he was only I was contributing to a lot of that. And we did okay. But I was only 27 at the time, and I've fucked it up on a regular basis, to be honest. And but we didn't have a brand new idea. We did that under somebody else's steam. But within Rochford, what we wanted to do actually, though, what was different is that was a very foreign exchange focused business, and we wanted to build a deeper and broader offering. Which we did successfully, but it took a long time and a lot of getting it wrong.
How did you handle that adversity or doubt when that happened?
I think that's a really, really interesting question, because I was also having in the run up to this, I was thinking, what is failure? Someone asked me today, are you scared of failing? And to be honest, I'm not, because I think you only fail if you stop. You only actually fail if you give up. Yeah. As long as you keep going, you haven't actually failed. Yeah. So for us, there was lots of harebrained schemes that I tried to put in. That the scheme itself, failed, but I just brushed it off and kept on going. We try again. So how I dealt with that was learn. So, and also when you go into business and you're an entrepreneur, or whether I am or not, but when you go into business, everyone's always going to give you a load of advice.
Yeah.
And what you find from most people that are risk takers by very nature is they're rubbish at taking advice, because you immediately just discount it and go, "What happened to me?" So I got lots of very sage advice from lots of people around me that I should have taken, that I didn't, and it hurt.
Yeah.
And it hurt a lot. And so I only actually learned from pain,
Yeah.
as opposed to someone saying, "You really shouldn't do this. This is a bad idea." Okay, no. And that's so having
That's
that
a lesson.
Yeah, but then also I didn't want to lose that. When and this is a really interesting lesson, I think, from entrepreneurship. Or there's a great quote of Richard Branson, which is "Start from yes," and that is very much how at Rochford we've built a business. Mm-hmm. Our product, what we do, our product suite now is much broader than it was when we started, and the only way you can achieve that is by doing things you've never done before. So there's nothing. My general attitude is there's nothing we can't do or I can't do. Yeah. We start with yes and we figure it out, and then you have this. So it's not. And lots of people, who are more risk averse, will be saying, look at why can't you do it?
Yeah.
And I just discount all that. And it's like, I don't care about that. It's how we are going to be successful, not why we can't be successful, how we are going to be successful. And that, again, depending on what your mindset is and the way you look at things, some people will view that as you being dismissive of the risks. And you go, well, no, we acknowledge the risks, but I don't care. I want to think about how we're going to accomplish it, not why we shouldn't.
So start from yes is a fantastic sort of mantra. But how do you know you're onto something correct? How do you know you're doing the right thing? You say, you started off by doing a narrow amount of things with Rochford, and now you do a vast sort of amount of product. How did you know it was right to take on those extra sort of skill sets?
I'll be honest, there's a lot of trial and error. Mm-hmm. So, and then you just take feedback from the market. Yeah. So, if you look at the product suite that we've got now, it's been refined on the basis that this has been really, really received well, and there's demand coming for it. So, we've got this currency overlay product, which is managing risk on international investments, which nobody else is really doing unless you're a massive super fund. So that the mid-market is not. So we basically find gaps in the market that are not addressed by other providers, and try and hit that.
Did that happen organically, or do you actively go out and look for gaps, or was both?
Both, but both is certainly the answer to that. That we are, but the way if I'm honest, the way that we grow and have grown hasn't been that rocket science. Is really we go and we meet a customer, and because we start from yes, we grow products from that because. We go in there with what we already do, and they say, "Can you do this?" And we say yes. So then we've got a new product. It's that, and then I go back to the team, and they're all going, "What the fuck have you done here? How are we going to deliver this?
We're doing this now."
Yeah. They're all going. Everyone's rolling their eyes. Goes done this again, but genuinely, that is. So we've gone and met someone, and if we haven't got a product they need, we ask them what we need, and we try and deliver that.
Yeah.
So I want to go into, our representative go into the treasurer or a CFO and ask him what he needs and find a way to give it to him. So that we haven't really had to be responsible for our own innovation because we've got this constant dialogue with the customer base that then says, and then you go and, which is different because we're a services business. We can do this, If I was going in to meet a customer who says, I want a one-man spaceship, it's going to be a little bit harder for me to go back and say.
But I think that adaptability is in entrepreneurship. It sounds like you've been doubting yourself as being an entrepreneur, but it sounds like that's exactly what you are.
But John made a few things they liked. So we haven't really, or I haven't necessarily created a product out of nothing, although I aspire to. And I'll potentially talk about that. And also, but we did take on a lot of the financial risk when we took on Rochford, but we had revenue from day one. But again, we had to borrow a lot of money to get it going, and that was a huge amount of risk and a huge amount of stress. But again, if I'm honest about what allowed me to take those kinds of risks, is I was very lucky to have a hugely supportive family, both emotionally and financially. So I knew if it blew up, that I wasn't going to be, on the street, even if that was not necessarily directly said. It was, I knew it in the back of my head.
So I got rid of the fear factor?
I think it allowed me, I could take risks that perhaps other people might, not be able to take. So I'd love to be able to say, because he's a big risk taker, but I think in the back of my head I knew I had a parachute, so that probably allowed me to take those kind of risks. So the people that, obviously, there's plenty of entrepreneurs that haven't been fortunate to have a parachute like I had. Yeah. So, I've got ultimate respect for them, and I hope I would have done the same thing without the parachute. But I think I've got to be honest and acknowledge that it was there.
Yeah, I don't think you can discredit yourself just because you had a parachute.
Just to transfer your learnings to, I guess, some of the stories of today, where companies are getting a lot of funding, Kickstarter campaigns, they're getting a lot of money from third-party sources. Mm-hmm. Surely that's a bit of a parachute as well, right? Yeah,
actually, I think now raising money, when we raised money to do the management buyout of Rochford in 2010, there really wasn't any choice for us other than friends and family. There was no kind of venture capital in Australia. Now it's a completely different, things like equitize and crowdfunding and all that is relatively, and actually I'm a little bit scared about some of that, because I think some of that crowdfunding needs a bit more regulation. But on the whole, though, I think it's a fantastic thing to give entrepreneurs access to capital. So there's probably never been a better time to be an entrepreneur and get access to capital and make your idea a reality.
Why are you worried about some of these platforms?
Yeah.
Because I think that the way they're structured is that they can be manipulated by an entrepreneur to massively de-risk themselves, but then retain huge amounts of the economics. So what I've seen in some of these crowdfunding platforms is a business that is unproven, has zero revenue, is raising off an equity valuation of, say, $10 million, and they say it's raising $1 million, which might be all the capital it needs to get going, and only giving away 10% of the equity. So you've basically got a book of retail investors taking all of the risk and only getting 10% of the return. So I think there just needs to be that needs to be policed a bit, isn't it? Because I could go on to Equitize and say, right, my valuation is this, or I don't want to get sued by those guys. So no, I'll beep that out. So I'm not sure, but I have seen that there's, and it is great though, because I think retail investors and investors should get opportunities to invest in exciting venture capital stuff, but it shouldn't be at the price where the entrepreneur has completely de-risked themselves and then also kept the 90% of the upside economics.
Yeah. Going back to the risk side of things, so you mentioned you'd gone from the mother hen, the coop, into your other space. I think there's a lot of misconception around entrepreneurs just loving the limelight, and it's all bells and whistles, whereas actually you guys wear a lot of risk up front, and you're the last to be paid, you're the last to turn the lights out.
Yeah, I mean,
do you want to talk about that?
I think you're probably right that most entrepreneurs do like the limelight. I think you've got to, you probably are one of those type of personalities. I think that most entrepreneurs are maybe a little bit attention-seeking in nature. So I don't actually think that's necessarily untrue. It's not all of them.
But you're buying into this. You're buying into that person, aren't you? So they need to have a vision.
Exactly. But it can be, because of that, it can be quite lonely, because it's your vision, and everybody else is there to support you. But it's when you start, when you've got a payroll, and then people are depending on your business or the business that you're running to get paid, and their lives depend on that, and the business isn't doing very well. That is I was actually speaking to another mutual friend of ours who's also an entrepreneur in a completely different industry, but unless you've been through that, it's really, really hard to understand what that feels like. And I remember in Rochford days that I at one point had to set up one of those like Stripe accounts so we could take credit card payments, just so we could use the credit card funding to run the payroll.
Right.
And that still wasn't enough to pay me. And we sailed quite close to the wind on a lot of occasions. And actually, that to me, in terms of entrepreneurship, is if you can do that and process that risk and still function, because lots of people, it would just, that kind of pressure would crack. Yeah. And that's what you really need to be an entrepreneur, is better deal with that kind of pressure, imminent failure, and move on. If you look at most successful entrepreneurs, they've all actually had, maybe a business or whatever that's and it's how you process that and just dust it off and start again.
So talk through that bit then. I'm really keen, because you're quite young. So you kicked that off at 27.
Mm-hmm.
You moved over here in 2007, not knowing anyone. You had a few people, obviously, from the previous company. We had Liz Van Sale on a few weeks ago, who emigrated from South Africa. We've obviously come over from the UK. She spoke a little bit about reinventing yourself when you start blank canvas in a new country. Did you go through that process? Was it a good time, or did you reinvent yourself when you started your own business?
That's a really, really good question. And actually, I think that I did reinvent myself when I got to Australia. I think I viewed it as and it was a massive promotion for me actually when I first came out, even before I started. Basically, running my own little division within the company I worked for. And as I said, Spencer, my boss, gave me huge amounts of latitude and support, which was fantastic. So it gave me a massive confidence boost. The backing that I'd received from the business and locally too. So, yeah, I did. And then I think, and from the moment because that business in Australia started from revenue zero, I felt from that point I was validating my own self as an entrepreneur and reinventing myself as someone that could lead and run a business. So very much that having to start life again and coming to Australia and reinvent that. And when I first got off the plane, and actually Spencer picked me up and took me to this flat in Mosman, which is another story, to be honest. I was hoping that I was going to be in this hotel in the CBD and I'd better go and meet somewhere. And he stuck me in a flat overlooking Mosman Rowers, and then who am I going to meet here? But some old lady with a blue rinse. So, having to just build a life and a friendship group from nothing did give me an opportunity to reinvent myself and probably cast away some old demons of insecurity that I might have had.
What did you leave in the UK? What did Thomas Averill leave at Heathrow? What did you bring to Sydney?
I think people. And I don't want to dwell on this because it's been pointed out to me that everybody gets bullied at school, so you shouldn't really just dwell on it too much. But it did shape the way I kind of viewed myself, and it gave me quite a lot of insecurity as a consequence of that. And I didn't really get out of that until I got successful. If I'm honest, and I didn't start feeling really confident in myself until I started making money. And as horrible as that sounds, I had all this insecurity from school, and probably a bit at university as well, that not being part of the cool gang or whatever, which I know you'd find very hard to believe looking at me now.
Beggars belief.
So I wasn't part of the cool gang, so being successful and that actually gave me confidence and the ability to leave that behind.
So knowing all that now, the bullying and everything has been something that has sort of defined you or helped shape your career path. Would you change it then? As weird as that sounds, yeah.
That's a very, very interesting question. I definitely, I don't have children yet, but I would definitely impact the way that because one of the, and I know this is entrepreneurship, so to say, segueing to bullying, and people will probably have, look, this is going to be very, and lots of people have opinions on this, but when I got bullied at school, I felt, and this was to me, that I let it happen. I just, turned, that whole sort of English thing of turning the other cheek. And it stopped when I fought back, when I said enough was enough. And I just wish I'd done that earlier.
Yeah.
And this is the sort of most haunting memory, but I remember actually facing a line of kids like a firing squad throwing rocks at me. And that is my haunting memory from school, being bullied, and you'd never want your...
It's tragic.
You'd never want your kids to go through that. But then the way I stopped that from happening was this false confidence. I wasn't confident, but I saw all these confident kids at school that weren't getting bullied, so I just pretended to be confident. And then over time, actually, it was less pretending and more, I was confident. It was really weird. So I created this, and you see it in other people. There's, some people that are, you see around, and you see this kind of false confidence, and it's a defense mechanism. And that's what I built, this kind of false confidence defense mechanism. And I hope now it's more confidence and less defense mechanism, but there's still an element of that there.
You think you'd be the same Tav now if it wasn't for that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think, no, I probably wouldn't be.
Yeah.
I could probably be a bigger arsehole if it wasn't for that.
Love it. Let's so you've left a few things. You've started your own business. You're making the journey there. You're building it up. You're paying bills and things. Who did you surround yourself with? So obviously you had people that helped you with the management buyout, put money into the business. So they've got a vested interest in the success. But who else did you surround yourself with? I'm keen to hear about the community, the network side of things that kept lifting you up rather than bringing you down. Because you sound like you had a lot of people saying no, which is normal. We even had people saying to us, "Why the hell are you doing a podcast?" Well, why not? Who lifted you up?
I just want to say, actually, guys, that you, John, to be honest, I've known you for 20 years, and you're one of the most positive people I know, and you have that same perspective. You have a can-do attitude. In the time that I've known you, you've launched your own club night, a fashion brand, a podcast, a networking event. I've only done one business, so I should be interviewing you. What's all this about?
That'll come soon. That'll come soon. Thank you, by the way.
Yeah.
So I don't actually... I didn't have that much of a sort of... there's a very, very good friend of mine, Ben, that runs he's got his own sort of engineering company, and he's a fellow entrepreneur, and him and I sort of exchanged notes on it a few times. But I don't know that many others, and it's hard because if you've never... So in the time I've run Rochford, I've never had a day where I haven't answered a work email or a work call. That not being able to switch off, or I was always responsible. I was in Provence doing one of those credit card things to get enough money to pay the payroll, to then pay the payroll, that sort of stuff, when I want to be relaxing. So if you've got someone that's a peer that works in a bank or something else, they just don't get that. And then to your point, John, around networking, as you know, I'm a member of your networking event, but never go. So I'm not actually...
Great networking.
No, and it's a fantastic thing, but I'm just not good at it. And it's because of that insecurity that I have, that I have to be the kind of... I want to be the main attraction in the room, and if I'm not, I don't really want to be there. And it's a really...
Just wear a salmon pink blazer like me. Everyone knows who you are.
Yeah, well, exactly. But it's a horrible thing to hear myself say it back, but it's true. So, I'm working on it, and I like to spend time, and I've got lots of time for lots of different people from all kinds of different backgrounds. But yeah, I'm not good at the whole kind of, which is weird for an entrepreneur. And maybe I'm one of those ones that's an introvert pretending to be an extrovert. I don't know, but
so we had Jacqueline Morrison on a few episodes ago, who does some leadership coaching and training, and we spoke a bit about children's behaviour. And if you can give a child a task, so let's say you say, right, John, I need you to do this. I need you to put those things into that hole, for example. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to put a square into a round hole. And right, John, do it. Okay. Now Big J, do it. Mm-hmm. And it was when you gave the kid another name or being a superhero that the imagination just went through the roof, and they found a way to do it. Who would be your superhero?
Well, that's an interesting question in terms of taking that back to being a kid. And look, I think I've spoken about, my parents were fantastic, and my dad was a big role model for me. So it's probably not surprising that I ended up doing what I was doing, because when everybody else was, wearing a cape and whatever, whizzing around the garden, I was putting my dad's suit on, and and Lucy, my sister, and I had this game that we called like business or whatever, and she was my secretary, and I'd put my dad's suit on, and we'd pretend that I was master of the universe or whatever. So it's for me, it wasn't that superhero. It was like putting my dad's suit on, Lucy taking minutes, and that was kind of that's fantastic Sunday afternoon. So
that was your cape. Your suit was your cape. So you do have a superhero. This is in your blood. This has been in your blood.
Yeah. So I think from that point, I think I did look up to my dad, and that provided me some kind of direction and ambition.
Yeah.
To try and emulate what he had achieved. So I didn't wear cape, so wore, and you've seen my dad, so you can imagine what his suit looked like on me when I was 8 years old.
I love it. When do you come down then, like being a business owner, running the business, looking after your staff, the hiring, the everything, all these intricacies as an employer you might not be across. When does Tom get his time just to decompress, come down? What do you do? How do you do it? We speak a lot, I think, on this podcast about fitness and just whether it's going for a run, going for a box, whatever that is. How do you get your time?
I think that, and if you were to ask my beautiful fiancée, Kat, love you, by the way.
Smooth.
I had to get that in there. That's what I struggle with. I don't, if I'm honest. So we've just launched a UK office, and we're working on this big government tender in the UK at the moment, and there was, emails going back and forth about that last night, and I was, Kat and I were having a conversation or whatever, and I couldn't stop myself from. So I'm never really 100% off duty. Yeah. So basically, for me, and this is why COVID was really, really tough, it was flying. The only time I was not, and I wish they'd uninvent onboard Wi-Fi, because this resisting trying to sign into that. So for me, I found I loved flying because it was, because if I'm in any other instance, if I'm out of contact, I feel guilty. I feel guilty that there could be something going on work that I need to impact, that I can make a difference, or I'm relying on someone that I shouldn't be relying on. And if I'm out of reach, I feel guilty. But so being on board a plane when I couldn't connect before they invented bloody onboard Wi-Fi was the only time I had this guilt-free decompression. On the plane. I try and get out and play golf and go for me. The big thing is, and again, this annoys Kat a little bit, I take very long showers. I did quite a lot of planning and thinking in the shower. I think I find them quite relaxing, and walking, playing golf, and then, as you know, Adriano and you and I all share a passion for motorsport, and I think for me, again, I remember going through a fairly tough time about a couple of years ago, and the three of us went out and got some adrenaline pumping, and when that happens, that adrenaline does clear the fog in your mind. You can't think about anything else. If you're driving a car around a racetrack really fast, you've got something else in your mind, you're going to stick it in the wall. So I find that kind of driving fast because it requires that focus that you can't be focusing on anything else. A good way of decompressing, especially when Adriana can't get away from me.
And we'll wrap that up now.
Following to the speed limit, right? So being an entrepreneur, I'm going to change the subject. Do you find yourself sometimes that you're not in a room because you've always got your mind somewhere else, focusing on, you just mentioned before last night, like, how do you sort of deal with that you're not always in the room and you're aware of that? Yeah,
I am aware of it, and I think that's, I'm aware of it, but I don't think I actually effectively deal with it.
Yeah,
and that has been a struggle for people around me, which I feel really, really guilty about. But yeah, I can just be having a conversation and not really being there or being present. So to be honest, I don't deal with it. I need to find a way of getting better at dealing with it. But that is a big struggle for me. One of the things I just wanted to sort of, it's been a sort of big conversation about me, but one of the things I wanted to say in terms of the lessons for me on being an entrepreneur, or actually particularly being a leader, being an entrepreneur and being a leader are two very, very different things, which I didn't realise when I started out. And what I basically wanted to be was the Pied Piper, that I just lead and people will follow behind me, but that doesn't work. And I learnt that, via pain. And I was, to be honest, when I started Rochford, I was a very, very poor leader, very, very poor leader. And the business suffered as a consequence of that. And I actually find the people bit and the leading bit actually quite challenging. And that's been an area where I have actually been trying to grow. And you've got to empower the people that you work with. You've got to build structure in an organisation and process and all. And to be honest, again, talking about process and structure is dull. So it's absolutely, absolutely vital. But it's very, very hard to get. So I'm very lucky now at Rochford. I've got some fantastic people that help sort of distill what we're trying to do, a sort of high-level strategy into structure and process. Whereas when we started the business, there wasn't any of that there, and I wasn't really very good at implementing it. So it's, that's been a big lesson. And to be honest, had the right people not come at the right time, the business may have failed if it was just me running off into the sunset and hoping everybody else was gonna follow. So I think you see that often in business.
Yep.
You see that, so quite often in entrepreneurial companies, you'll see the original founders step down into where their passion is. So if it's in tech, they might become the chief technology officer and they'll get a CEO in or whatever. We didn't grow Rochford to a size where I could have done that, but I think ultimately to quote the Castle, I'm an ideas man. I'm probably not the best managing director or CEO in the world, because it's all great having ideas, but executing it, and to execute an idea, you need discipline, you need structure, you need lots of people around you. And so I can go off and have all these wonderful ideas, which I believe in our ability to deliver, but I can get a bit sort of sidetracked from an execution standpoint. So that's why you need great people around you.
So about the great people around you, how do you grow your business, and how do you choose the right staff?
Staff is, Rochford's been very lucky in terms of the staff that we've hired. We haven't had.
Is it luck?
There's always an element of luck involved, I think. But I think culturally we've found the right people, and to be honest, a few of the good or significant hires I've known for a long time before they became employees of the business. But again, it's actually one of the good things, we have given people a lot of latitude, to grow.
Yeah.
So, TJ, who's now on our executive team, very very senior member of the business. started as a graduate only in 2015, and he's now pretty much leading a huge piece of technology development for us that could be the future of the business, and that's in 5 years. And so we've enabled him to be effectively like an entrepreneur within the business. So I think that's something that we have done well. I think anything I can identify talent. I can't manage it, but I can see it.
Do you encourage that sort of creativity or entrepreneurship within the business?
Absolutely.
Like how much leash would you give someone? Would you let them burn themselves, or would you
a little bit
on the shoulder just before and say, "No, mate, pull your head in"?
A little bit of burning yourself is good, because that's how you really learn. So I think we try and we don't want to put the business at risk, but I think we try and give people that have that desire to be entrepreneurial. One of the challenges is, though, when you're always hiring entrepreneurial people, and this has been the one we've struggled with, is the business has got to continue to grow to satisfy their own appetites, their own career paths, which is really, really difficult in a small company.
Yeah.
You've got to be growing as quickly as their ambition is.
Yeah.
And that's been a challenge for us.
I think that's a challenge for a lot of businesses.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on moving away from Rochford for a second, but keen to get your ideas on this? There seems to be this appetite where people want to launch a business, grow, list, and then get out. There doesn't seem to be a longevity play anymore, where you build a business to support your family, have a lifestyle. It's all about getting there as quick as possible, in the shortest amount of time as possible, and sometimes as lean as possible. What do you think about that? Am I right?
For true entrepreneurs, I don't necessarily think you are right, because if you look at someone like Elon Musk, who walked away from PayPal with whatever $1 billion, and then basically rolled the dice and risked a whole lot on SpaceX and Tesla. So it's not about the money for him per se; it's about proving in himself that he can do it. And so I think I mentioned to you guys the other day around how contentment is probably, for most a really good entrepreneur is never content, which makes them a fucking pain in the ass to be around. So that whole concept of you kind of you cash your chips in and walk off and don't do anything. I don't think real entrepreneurs are like that. I think they need to carry on and keep moving forward and do the next thing. So for me, I never want to stop being part of something that's innovative and growing, and I've got a few ideas on how we're going to do that going forward, and whether that's as a principal or supporting other entrepreneurs. But I think people that go in there and just go and raise capital, start a business and flip it. I'm not sure whether because that's not how it's all right. On to the next one. Okay. Or which again, which makes it difficult, because running businesses and starting businesses is stressful, and it's a big personal life sacrifice. And you looking at it from the outside looking in, when's enough? When is enough? And it's not. There is no enough. That's the problem. You just got there is no right. I've done this to achieve this. It's there is no enough.
Always wanting more.
Yeah.
So go on.
From obviously from starting out Rochford, coming through, you've obviously would have made a lot of mistakes. Mm-hmm. What are some of the mistakes that you wish you never made, and some of the mistakes that you're glad you did make?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think when I first started the business, I was probably fairly naive, arrogant, and probably a bit flippant about how to really take this to the next level. And so I'd love to have been actually more professional about the way I went about it to begin with. I think we would have got where we need to go a lot quicker with a lot less pain along the way. The way we funded Rochford was probably not the best as well, because we did a management buyout. We funded it through debt, which meant you got to pay that debt off. And when you want to grow a company, you don't want to fund it through debt, you want to fund it through equity, which made it a challenge for us because we always had this, right, well, we want to make this investment or hire this person or do this next new thing, but we've got to pay this debt off. So the biggest thing I would have changed is the way we actually financed the company to begin with, and actually gone and raised a lot more money and potentially had like a broader professional support network and, you know, Des, bless him, tried his best to stop me, you know, save me from myself. But when you just, as I say, I only learnt from the pain. So yeah, I think that was a big lesson in terms of how you fund a startup business. And I think, you know, I was actually advising another one recently that had this sort of equity convertible note structure in it, and that made it was a real difficult for them to then finance growth. So my advice to entrepreneurs on that is actually try and raise more money than you need, because there's this big glass ceiling in terms of achieving growth, and you need quite a lot of money to get through that. So I should have raised more money and tried to go harder and faster, as opposed to the way we went about it. Other big mistakes. Not attributing enough value to the sort of support I had in the bigger company, like the process and structure and the other talent that was there that didn't come with us in post management buyout. Which when I did it, I didn't think it was a problem. I think, you know, we can conquer anything. Yeah, and you know, it took us a long time to actually solve for that. So there were some of the big mistakes. And then probably being a bit over optimistic. I remember one year, it was actually our 5th year anniversary, and we just had this epic quarter coming into Christmas. We signed these 2 massive customers, made an absolute fortune. And I thought, right, okay, we've really hit the J curve now. This is going to go, you know, gangbusters from here. You know, I hired a massive super yacht for the Christmas party, went bananas, and then by February we were looking down the barrel of the gun again, you know. So, and we'd lost those 2 big customers because it was 2 massive projects, and then it was gone. So, and then, you know, getting a harsh back down, jump to reality. But the thing is, if I was honest with myself, I probably knew that, hang on, we're doing really, really well, but that's in 2 customers. Those 2 customers could go away, so you should probably just... But I always look on and probably are too discounting of, well, what if that doesn't happen, or what if that doesn't work out? That just doesn't really factor into my mind, which you need to have people around you that you can't have everybody that's just, because then the boat would sink.
Yeah. It sounds like the team concept is really paramount. So you need someone like yourself that's a risk taker, has a vision, happy to coin a phrase, you know, fly by the seat of the pants. But then you need a team around you that can either bring you down or say, look, yeah, great idea. How are we going to do this? Or we're not capable of doing this at the moment.
So what we've got now is actually a process to break ideas down into how you execute them, as opposed to them just being an idea. Yeah. And you know, that's been achieved by the talent that the business has hired. Yeah. About how we can actually, you know, and there's lots of ways that you can achieve that now in terms of, you know, around running processes and all that sort of stuff. And actually, TJ, I mentioned earlier, is fantastic at distilling an idea into, right, how do we break that down and actually, how do we actually achieve it? So yeah, then the team's massively important, but also having someone that, like me, that pushes the team, because, you know, what makes me different is not capability; it's just belief. Really, I'm no more capable than anybody else, and so I've worked with some hugely capable people that they necessarily want to go outside their experience. Yep. But then you push them to go out there and they nail it, and then it's fine. So you got to, and that's, to be honest, how Rochford's grown, because our services are people. So we've had to push people and say, right, all our people have got to do stuff they've never done before.
Oh, that's leadership. So tips on being a good leader?
again, I think that's actually one of my weaknesses.
Yeah.
And actually, if you want my biggest lesson was not having enough proactive engagement with my team. I think you need to be. So my biggest lesson and tips on being a good leader, which I don't do, but you should do, is constant engagement with your staff. Not this kind of, and it's not shouting from the front, delivering a big speech and whipping everybody up. That may or may not work. It's actually sitting down, having coffees with them, having lunches with them. Right, where do you want to be next week, next month, next year? How does the business going there? Make them feel like they've got a voice. And actually, Rochford's quite good at that. But make them feel they have an influence in the way the business is going, the direction the business is taking, and make them feel valued. But do that often, not once a year or once a quarter. And actually, if I speak to people that I know that are working for other companies and that they're disillusioned, it's because they feel like they're disenfranchised, that they're not valued by their organisation like they need to be. So, I think that's the key thing for me for being a leader is you've got to have frequent and direct conversations. Don't avoid topics. Get to the heart of the issue and then move forward.
What does life after Rochford look like? If you could do the same journey outside of the FX industry or the finance industry, what would you love to sink your teeth into?
Well, so I talked about my initial sort of motivations, but now my motivations for the next things, whenever that are actually more altruistic than they were before. So, and I know whether this might be boring for some people, but being an economist, I'm very, very keen observer of kind of the geopolitical scene across the world. And I'm really, really concerned about the growing rich-poor divide, creating polarization, so bringing people apart, which creates Donald Trump, creates Brexit. And it's only getting worse, and actually things like COVID and the GFC only make it worse. And governments aren't really doing anything to address that because the political system is wrong. And I think fintech has a fantastic opportunity to address that, and no one is in fintech yet. So that's no one has actually used technology in finance to really disrupt finance. They have made existing processes and existing products a lot more efficient, but they haven't created a new product, with the exception of cryptocurrency, added technology. Cryptocurrencies has really been the only innovation in finance that's been driven by technology. So what I want, or what I would love to be involved in going forward is, or at some point, is a fintech that is involved in trying to reallocate capital to the people that need it, and also the people that can achieve underlying economic productivity, as opposed to just asset price inflation.
What do you mean by underlying economic activity?
So what happened post the GFC and what is happening now post-COVID is effectively the world's central banks and governments are giving free money to rich people and rich organisations. And then the rich, and they don't give it to the poor people because they're bad credit. So they give free money to rich people, rich organisations. So the people that don't need the money, and then because the people that get this free money don't need it, they then go and invest it in assets. So then you get things like property prices going up globally. Then you get equity prices going up globally, but you don't have GDP growth. So you just have asset inflation, which, because poor people don't own assets, is only the rich that get richer and the poor get poorer or stay the same. And then also their first home, and you see it in Sydney all the time, is further and further out of their reach. So then you get this whole section of society that's massively disenfranchised, because they see all this, and wealth becomes so much more obvious now with Instagram and social media and all these and then so you get this sort of uprising. And last time this happened in in history where there was this sort of privileged few that was so far away from the masses, it triggered the French Revolution and the heads ended up on sticks. So for me, I would like to be involved in something that tries to address that. I think it's one of the biggest challenges the world's facing. But the problem is it's such a big challenge. It's such a macro issue that a small little fintech can't solve it. You need to go and really, and then you've got to lobby government, and it's going to be a massive endeavour. But if I had, if I could do anything I wanted to do that would actually achieve some kind of social change, that would be it.
So seems like quite a big one.
I was going to say
it's not an easy one to solve.
It's not, no, but I think like most things, it starts with the conversation. It starts with more people realising that it is a problem, and how do you do that? In the same way that you do with your business, you have the idea, or you go to people and they want this from you. I can imagine people want this to happen, but they don't know how to do it. So you try and distill the idea and go, well, actually, what are the steps that we take? I
mean, the really, really concerning thing about it is the people that are disenfranchised are blaming the wrong people for being disenfranchised. So if you take the US, for example, so the disenfranchised vote in the Republican Party, make America great again, and blame all their bad luck on immigration, or American products can't compete. But it's the Republican Party and the rich people that lobby the Republican Party that are actually making them disenfranchised. So it's the greatest hoodwink of life, that actually the people they're fucking over don't actually know it's them that's fucking them over, and they're actually voting them back in. So they're right to be pissed off, but they're pissed off with the wrong people. Yeah. And there's no one actually talking about that really at a big level, or educating the world on that. And it's the economics of it are really quite simple. And it's if you're worth 200 million, or you're working in an institution that's worth 200 million, you can go and borrow at 0.2% from the US, and from banks in the US. Then you go and take that 200 million. First of all, you go and stick it in a tax haven, and then you go and buy assets somewhere with it. You might go and buy 3 skyscrapers in wherever, in Sydney or whatever. So because you can't, unlike fiscal policy with central banks throwing out cheap money, it gets transported. You can't control where the free movement capital takes it, wherever the person wants to take it. And that is what's creating these huge geopolitical issues globally. And I don't think anybody's really kind of addressing that. People are too worried about systemic failure, where I could wax on for another hour on this, so maybe I'll just draw a line under that. But that, for me, some kind of fintech that involves much more equitable distribution of capital, because I'm not a socialist, but I'm about a level playing field. So something that gives people that have coming from a less advantaged background equal opportunity to access capital and be an entrepreneur, for example.
So back onto being an entrepreneur. Would you ever retire?
Potentially. I mean, I think I wouldn't mind being one of those gentleman drivers, so I could go and school you in a GT racing on a regular basis.
We'll talk offline about that.
So I think that's probably the closest I'm going to get to retiring. I always want to, say no is the answer. I'd happily not have operational stress, but I want to be involved in doing something and creating value.
So where did your obsession with cars start?
That's an interesting with my. I mean, it's a great bond that my dad and I have. So he took me to my first Formula One race at Silverstone in 1994, and I think we went to something like 20 straight British Grand Prix together.
Wow!
And I remember getting out of the car, and this is pre-turbo. So when the engines were just absolutely screaming, you could hear it from the car park. And I think we were in the Scania box. Do you remember Scania trucks? I don't know if they're still going anymore.
Scania, yeah, they're still here.
Yeah, and they were a sponsor of Jordan at the time. So Eddie Irvine and Rubens Barrichello drove for Jordan, and they came and spoke to us. And it was, I don't know how far back your memory goes from, but it was the year that Johnny Herbert won won the Silverstone Grand Prix, and the reason that he won, it was one of the many races where Michael Schumacher took out Damon Hill.
That was when Herbert was racing with Lotus?
No, Herbert was Schumacher's teammate at Benetton.
Okay. Benetton,
Yeah. So that was my first Formula One experience, but then I think I bought there was a car magazine that doesn't exist anymore that I got in the. I used to remember back in the day in the 90s where people would say, right, you get a magazine that came in a clipboard, and then you get every other magazine. You used to put it in. You put it in clipboards. Yeah, in a binder. Yeah, in a binder, not a clipboard. So there was a car magazine that was doing that in the 90s. I can't remember which one it was.
It wasn't Max Power, was it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Max Power. I was never one for Kevin up a Barina and sticking a big exhaust on a Barina. That wasn't really my style.
It's a Corsa, isn't it?
Yeah, Corsa in the UK. Yeah. But yeah, so there was a car magazine that you buy and you put it all in your binder. And the first one I got of those was had a test drive of a Ferrari Testarossa, and so it was early 90s. And for me, that was from then it was. Well, I've been passionate about cars ever since, and cars and motorsport. And I think unless you're really into it, some people don't necessarily understand that as a passion. But I love it, and there's nothing that clears my mind more than being on the edge and hopefully not hitting that tree going around the car very fast.
Well, that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I certainly get it.
If it was John driving, the tree would win.
Yeah,
I'm like driving Miss Daisy.
What is your favourite car, by the way, before John takes it on a segue?
I actually, I love. It's probably a little bit out of reach for me at the moment, but I love the 812 GTS.
Yeah, that's a lovely car.
I think probably the last normally aspirated V12 Ferrari.
Yep.
So I think I think it's a great looking car. So that from a modern thing, and then historically a 275.
Oh, nice choice.
That's from Ferrari. I think more within the realistic time frame. Cat, stop listening. I'd love an E-Type actually.
Yeah.
I'm probably less traditional. I'd probably get the V12 one.
Oh, Series 3.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I've got two at work if you can.
Yeah. And actually, I want one of those Alpha GTAs that I keep messaging you about.
Yeah.
I think that's a great looking car.
Yeah.
But my ultimate ambition is to have a lot of cars as well. That's probably my kind of materialistic
outlet.
Yeah.
I get that.
Well, mate, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you for sharing your journey. Don't be too hard on yourself. You've obviously done a hell of a lot. I think you've acknowledged a lot of your learnings. Again, no one fails because you keep trying, and you certainly keep trying. I think you're now surrounding yourself with some incredible people that can certainly help you get to your next stage, and the bits you want to get your teeth stuck into. I'm going to be observing that from afar. My final question to you is: you've got dinner booked for 4 people. Mm-hmm. You're obviously one of them. Who are the other 3 that you'd have dinner with, and why?
Oh right, okay. We're talking living and dead, that kind of conversation.
Sure.
Okay, who would I have dinner with? I would have dinner with Donald Trump just because I just like to school him face to face. So I would like him to be there and just challenge him. I would like Milton Friedman to be there. He was the founder of supply side economics because I think there's the whole economic environment in terms of what's happening now. There's a new normal, so I'd like his opinion on that. But he's currently dead. Currently dead. I would like James Hunt there.
Oh, yes.
Because...
coolest man of all time.
Yeah, very cool Formula One driver and a CAD. So there's part of me that likes him. So what have I got? I've got one left.
No, that's it, done.
You're
the
okay.
4th.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go table for 5. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I know.
That's a mixed bag, man.
That is a mixed bag, yeah.
Go on then, one more.
One more. Okay. I don't know. Margaret Thatcher.
Wow.
And this is not necessarily because I admire all these people. I do admire some of them, but just I think it would be very interesting to have a conversation. I'd probably just try and send things off to set them all off like fireworks and sort of watch from afar.
Well, speaking of fireworks, thank you for joining us on Lifestyle Pirates, Tom, telling us your story. It's been amazing as a mate to watch it from afar. I look forward to many, many more stories. If people want to get hold of you, discuss your journey so far, maybe talk about what you want to get out of, or invite you to a cheeky track day, how do they get in contact?
I message you on your Facebook page or whatever.
Lovely.
Yeah, I don't want to give out telephone numbers or
don't
whatever.
do that. But LinkedIn profile's good. You're on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm on
Lovely.
LinkedIn. People can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
You can connect on LinkedIn.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Well,
Thank you very much, Tom.
All right, thanks, guys. That was great. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Averill.